Hello and welcome to Euro Football Daily, where today we're looking at 10 footballers who are not the player you think they are. Number 10, Paolo Maldini. There's no football myth more persistent than the idea that Paolo Maldini almost never made a tackle. The story goes that Maldini averaged 0.56 challenges a game over the course of his career, with the 5-time Champions League winner saying, "If I have to make a tackle, then I've already made a mistake." And while the Italian did actually say that, his style of play doesn't quite reflect his belief. Probably the greatest defender ever to step onto a pitch, Maldini was the rare player who managed to be the best in the world in 2 positions across his career, excelling at left back and centre back, and at the time of writing is one of just 17 outfield players to have appeared in over 1,000 matches. But he loved a challenge. Across his appearances at World Cups and Euros, a total of 6 tournaments with the Milan man holding the record for minutes played in World Cups, Maldini averaged 3.4 tackles a game, and in his final season of club football as a 39-year-old, he put up 3.9 tackles per 90 minutes, a tally which would have ranked 7th in Europe's top 5 leagues in the 2018-19 season. And if you look up any highlight reel of the GOAT schooling the best attackers of the 90s, you'll see plenty of reducers, and in combining the silk of a Hummels with the strength of a Puyol, Maldini shows that reality is sometimes more amazing than the myth. Number 9, Roy Keane. These days it's become common to see United's legendary 1999 midfield as 2-tiered, Scholes and Giggs the best 2, Keane and Beckham the inferior pair. But while an incredible 632 Premier League appearances have boosted Giggs' legend, Keane was arguably the better player and inarguably the more important. Keane had almost missed out on a professional career thanks to his height, and at 18 was still in Ireland and on the dole. However, he'd learned to box at the age of 9, and giving up was not in his nature, with the result that a decade later he had 4 titles and the Champions League to his name. But though he was a fierce competitor and ball winner, Keane was so much more. He picked up 73 yellows during his Old Trafford career, but that's only the same number as Cesc Fabregas, who got booked every 362 minutes to Keane's 422. And in fact, the Irishman was renowned for his game control and one-touch passing, with Wayne Rooney describing him as the best passer he ever played with, ahead of Scholes, while Darren Fletcher said Keane had the best first touch he ever saw. He played with Berbatov. Keane appeared in the PFA Team of the Year 5 times, more than Lampard or John Terry, and he was named United's Player of the Season in 1999 when they won the treble, and again the next campaign, becoming the first player in the club's history to win the award in consecutive seasons. But nothing sums up Keane's brilliance like his man-of-the-match performance in a 1-0 away win at Anfield in 2005. 33 and hampered by a hip injury, Keane left Steven Gerrard chasing shadows. Gerrard would go on to win the Champions League and come 3rd for the Ballon d'Or that year, while Keane would leave for Celtic. But for 90 minutes, it was clear who was the superior footballer. Number 8, Erik Lamela. At number 8, we have a current player in the form of Tottenham's Erik Lamela. The Argentinian has been largely peripheral since a club record £30 million move to North London in 2013, thanks to injuries. But he was a huge coup for the Lily-Whites at the time. Then the winger was 21 and had bagged 20 league goals and assists the previous season for Roma, making him one of the best wide prospects in Europe. Lamela has shown quality in flashes for Tottenham, putting up roughly 2 completed dribbles per 90 and 2.5 chances created across his entire spell at White Hart Lane, despite being hampered by regular injuries. And that poor fitness, coupled with his elegance and skill on the ball, led some journalists and even Tottenham fans to label the attacker lazy, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Immensely hard-working in the press, Lamela averaged an insane 5 tackles and interceptions a game in the 2014-15 Premier League campaign, the same as a defensive midfielder like Thomas Partey, and 4 a game in 2015-16, while contributing 14 goals and assists. He also plays a key role under Pochettino in ending opposition moves early with tactical fouls. Since Poch joined Spurs in 2014, Lamela has ranked 3rd in the squad for fouls per game in 2 seasons and 1st in the other 3. Now 27, Lamela could yet find his way out of the treatment room and become a key contributor to the team again. But even if he doesn't, it's time to reassess the player and give him the credit his work rate deserves. Number 7, Marcelo. Like Roberto Carlos before him, Marcelo's talent in attack has often seen him criticised for neglecting his defensive duties. And as with Roberto Carlos, that assessment is completely wrong. The Brazilian has been with Real Madrid since 2007 and is closing in on 500 appearances for the club, currently sitting 26 behind Carlos's tally of 512. And as Cristiano Ronaldo transitioned from left winger to centre forward, Marcelo became more and more important on the flank, averaging over 2 dribbles and 2 chances created per game in a white shirt, and delivering an incredible 90 assists for Los Blancos, not far off the 101 Arjen Robben managed in his decade with Bayern Munich. That offensive threat helps Marcelo push back opposition fullbacks, but when called into action, the former Fluminense man is also a perfectly capable defender. Firstly, his skill on the ball and touch under pressure have seen him dispossess less than once a game in his whole time in Spain, meaning he rarely gets the backline into trouble. And in his younger days, he was extremely aggressive in the challenge too. In the 2010-11 campaign, he made a colossal 7.5 tackles and interceptions per 90, and was still making 5 in 2017, helping Real's much derided defence concede under a goal a game in 7 of his 13 seasons with them. And in that time, he's picked up 20 trophies, including 4 domestic titles and 4 Champions Leagues, and he's made the FIFA Pro World 11 on 5 occasions. Perhaps he's not such a liability after all. Number 6, David Luiz. It's rare to find a player who has won as much as David Luiz has, and yet who is still considered a liability by the majority of fans. But the Brazilian has never quite earned the respect he probably deserves. The defender, who is now 32, has 18 trophies to his name, including 4 titles in 3 different countries and the Champions League. But he retains a reputation for rashness, with his £50 million switch to PSG in 2014 and his £34 million return to Chelsea 2 years later, often cited as examples of overspending by football's nouveau riche. However, critics of Luiz's hyper-aggressive style of defending as a youngster misunderstood his role in the Chelsea setup. In 2013-14, he was paired with either a slowing Gary Cahill or a 33-year-old John Terry, and his job was to both distribute and to pressure the ball, while the Englishman swept up behind. As a result, he was dribbled past more than once a game, but he also made twice as many tackles per match as Terry, and completed as many long balls as Terry and Cahill put together. And when Luiz returned to Stamford Bridge after a spectacularly successful spell in France, where PSG conceded 85 goals in 118 games with him in the side, he excelled in a more conservative back three, making the Premier League Team of the Year in 2017. Now once again in a back four, Luiz was the Blues' third most used player in 2018-19, losing the ball just 3 times all year and getting dribbled past just 7 times in the league. That's fewer than Laporte and Alderweireld, despite playing more minutes. He may still be considered a joke by some, but David Luiz's exceptional versatility and bursting trophy cabinet should make him a Chelsea icon. Number 5, Didier Drogba. Didier Drogba arrived at Chelsea in 2004, when the Blues were entering their 50th year without winning the league, and had only participated in the Champions League once in its half-century history. With the Ivorian as their talisman, the club would go on to win back-to-back Premier League titles and 4 with the former Marseille man up front, establish themselves as European giants, and eventually conquer the continent in 2012. And as a result, it's not surprising that Drogba's reputation has slightly outgrown the truth. Despite netting 10 goals in 10 finals, Drogba's scoring rate was significantly worse in normal games. Across his 8-year first spell with Chelsea, he scored under a goal every other match, and though he managed to hit 20 league goals in 2 of those campaigns, his best tally in the remaining 6 seasons was 12, failing to reach double figures on 3 occasions. In fact, he only finished as Chelsea's top scorer twice, the same as Nicolas Anelka, and was only the club's player of the season once, perhaps indicating that, as good as he was, other players were more important in bringing silverware back to Stamford Bridge. However, while he may not have been as great a goal scorer as fans may claim, with his creativity and hold-up play, Drogba showed that a modern forward was about much more than simply finishing, and in the process set the template for strikers like Firmino, Benzema and Lacazette. A seminal player, but not a goal machine. Number 4, James Milner. Perhaps if James Milner's first name was pronounced James, he wouldn't be considered boring, but the Liverpool man has gained a reputation for dullness over the years, which is totally at odds with his talent. The Leeds native burst onto the scene with Aston Villa and was the Premier League's Young Player of the Season in 2009-10, as well as making the Team of the Year ahead of Frank Lampard, who scored 22 league goals that campaign. Then 24, Milner scored 7 and assisted 12 in 36 league appearances to help Villa finish 6th, and Man City swooped for the wide man. Twice a title winner at the Etihad, Milner played across the midfield and even as a centre forward for the Citizens, getting involved in a goal every 2.3 starts and averaging over 40 appearances a year for the club. But it was his move to Liverpool when his contract expired in 2015 which revealed his true brilliance. Milner spent a whole year at left back where he averaged over 5 tackles and interceptions a game, featured on the flank where he made 2.3 key passes a match, and sparkled in central midfield, where in 2018-19 he ranked 16th in the league and top of the Liverpool squad for progressive passes and runs per 90. Being a utility man is one thing, but being among the best in the division in every position you play is something special, and so is James Milner, his spectacular career rewarded with a Champions League medal at the age of 33. Nobody at Liverpool had done more to earn it. Number 3, Theo Walcott. First making a name for himself at Southampton at 16 years old and making a £9 million move to Arsenal 2 months before his 17th birthday, Theo Walcott was widely expected to become a global superstar. His frightening pace and fearless dribbling made him lethal on the counter-attack, but over time shoulder and knee injuries chipped away at him, as he made over 30 league appearances in just 2 of his 11 seasons with the Gunners. The eventual consensus was that the England man was little more than his speed and lacked the brain and end product to be a top-class player. But Walcott was a strong and useful right winger during a period in world football when those were in short supply. Across his time with Arsenal, he was involved in 114 goals in 271 games, twice scoring more than 10 goals in a season and twice registering more than 10 assists. He contributed to a strike every 138 minutes for the club, despite never scoring a penalty. By comparison, Eden Hazard scored or assisted every 133 minutes for Chelsea in the Prem. And if you take away his penalties, given that 3/4 of all penalties are scored and simply being put on spot kick duty is an advantage, he only netted or created a goal for his teammates every 151 minutes, despite playing on a team which won 2 titles during his time there. As easy as it was to deride Arsenal's constant hunt for the 4th place trophy, they never missed out on Champions League football, while Walcott was a key part of their attack, and his combinations with Rosicky, Nasri, Fabregas and Van Persie produced some of the London side's best football ever. Perhaps not a legend, but a great servant to the club. Number 2, Paul Scholes. Criticise Paul Scholes and you're likely to have United fans sending you quotes from Xavi, Iniesta and Pirlo telling you how the midfielder redefined the deep-lying playmaker role for the modern era. But it's often forgotten that Scholes did not start his career as a game controller, instead featuring in attacking midfield in his first decade under Alex Ferguson. In fact, Scholes' debut for United came as a striker, and he gradually moved further and further back, a position change clear in his goal numbers, with the Englishman reaching double figures in all competitions 8 times in 11 seasons before 2005 and 0 times in 8 after that. Of course he was getting older, but his role was also different before, with Roy Keane's dogged presence behind him allowing Fergie to use the Ginger Magician as a Swiss Army knife, slotting him in wherever necessary, including on the left. Though United fans often claimed Scholes' international career was ruined by being shifted wide to accommodate Gerrard and Lampard, the player himself didn't mind it, saying, "The truth is I played on the wing for Man United too and scored a lot of goals." But as his mobility waned and Keane left, Scholes became the fuel in United's engine room, where his immaculate passing earned him 5 further titles, a second Champions League win and inclusion in the 2006-07 PFA Team of the Year. Just the second time he would make the 11. Having been merely excellent in an attacking role, Scholes was an all-time great in the deep position. Perhaps with that in mind, it's no wonder that Xavi and Iniesta loved Scholes. In his 20 years at the top, he combined the best of both of them. Number 1, Zinedine Zidane. It's often said that the difference between a good player and a great one is consistency. But if that's correct, Zinedine Zidane can't be considered a true great, despite a trophy cabinet featuring 3 titles, a Champions League, a European Championship and a World Cup, as well as a Ballon d'Or. With Ronaldo and Messi around, it's become more normal for attacking players to put up a goal contribution per game, and by comparison, the stars of the past can seem a little underwhelming in the stats. Zidane's best moments on a pitch are arguably the best moments in the history of football, but his goal contribution numbers, while strong, fail to reach the same heights. Across 227 games for Real Madrid, Zidane contributed 115 goals and assists. That's more than one every other game, or coming roughly every 158 minutes. That sounds very decent, but Mesut Ozil, often the scapegoat for Arsenal's decline, has contributed 117 for the Gunners in 231 appearances, exactly the same rate, on a side which featured Giroud instead of Raul, Xhaka instead of Makelele, and Mkhitaryan instead of Figo. And the story's the same at national level, with Zidane producing 61 goals and assists in 108 caps, while Ozil managed 63 goals and assists in just 92 international matches. Now, we're not saying that Zidane is not a legendary player and one of the greatest ever to play the game, but next time you criticise a modern footballer for going missing, it might be worth checking the guys you compare them to. You may be surprised at what you find. So those are our 10 footballers who are not the player you think they are, but who would you have included? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, stay right here on the channel and check out our scout report on the rise of women's football. And as always, make sure that you like and subscribe.